place. That's not my place. But I want to ask your permission to approach it from a different angle. And I told them what I wanted to do, and they said, okay, that'll work. And they let me do this. This was not an easy thing to do, but you know, these were the times that we were in. This is called The Fallen, and it's for Derek Chauvin, the police officer who murdered George Floyd. I am writing you a poem because you and I are both white and very much alive. So you still have the chance to hear me out on this one. George Floyd, on the other hand, is black, very much dead, and will soon have 1,000 better poems written in his honor. Honor being a thing you will never have again a day, and you're now mostly over life. The math seems pretty easy. I read faces for a living. It's a part of my duty on the job. Another thing you lost, by the way, on that day when you forgot yourself. And what I saw there in your face, it was just a white man turning whiter as his soul drained out of his knee in exactly 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The loss of that vital state didn't stop there, though, as the soul of our nation somehow got its heart caught in the current, as it churned against the flow, from what I sensed in the moment of George's better soul as it must have been rising. And what I saw in that face of yours was a horror-striking absence that looked like the next stage of the devolution in our species. Your forehead appeared to shrink. You lit a fire to consume the age, buddy. Minneapolis burning. Protests that may determine whether or not the rest of us will become smaller with you. What I saw in that shot of the final moment of your relative freedom, it made me question my past decision to suspend my old belief in hell and that it housed a disgraced angel that became Satan. So I had to treat it. You know, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? You know, you have to deal with it. And so, let's see. During this time, an awesome Nashville singer-songwriter, a guy named Jason Isbell, who's a pretty intense guy, came out. So what happened is during the journey of writing these poems, I began doing a live streaming show on Facebook sessions where I would read some of these poems and then do a song that goes with them. And I had a friend who was helping me choose the music for the fireplace sessions. And my friend, when on the show that I was doing, the Derek Chauvin poem, that was the only thing I was going to do on that show. And during this time, Jason Isbell out in Nashville came out with a very fiery song that got him in a lot of trouble. Can you imagine poets, singer-songwriters getting themselves in trouble? It's by the way, for 10,000 years, poets and politicians haven't really gotten along. You know, it's a long-standing tradition, so you know, what do we do? So Jason came out with this. It's called White Man's World, and well, I'll let him speak for himself. I'm a white man living in a white man's world. And under my roof is a baby girl. I thought that the world could be hers one day, but her mama knew better. I'm a white man living in a white man's town. Wanna take a shot of coke and burn it down. Mama wants to take that Nashville sound, but they're never gonna let her. There's no such thing as someone else's war. Your creature comforts aren't the only things worth fighting for. You still breathing, it's not too late. We're all carrying one big burden, sharing one fate. I'm a white man living on a white man's street. Got the bones of a red man under my feet. The highway runs through their burial grounds, past the oceans of cotton. I'm a white man looking in a black man's eyes, wishing I'd never been one of the guys who pretended not to hear another white man's joke. Oh, the time's not forgotten. There's no such thing as someone else's war. Your creature comforts aren't the only things worth fighting for. You're still breathing, it's not too late. We're all carrying one big burden, sharing one fate. I'm a white man living in a white man nation. I think the man upstairs must have took a vacation. I still have faith, but I don't know why. Maybe it's the fire in my little girl's eyes. Maybe it's the fire in my little girl's eyes. The fire in my little girl's eyes. So, the little girl's eyes, what I want to do is read one for mine. My little girl just turned 26. She turned 26 not too long ago. She's an extraordinary creature. She has been through an awful lot. She is now a total bad little rock climber. She has become like an extraordinary rock climber. She's a rock climbing instructor. She's also a great musician, a singer-songwriter, and performs. She and I have we performed together a lot. It's one of the highlights of my life to get to have your daughter do a show with you. And she is also just happens to be a uniquely talented classical guitar player. And she, just to give you an idea of how serious she got with classical guitar, she performed in the 100th annual Chamber Music Festival in Madrid, Spain, on the stage where Segovia performed his debut concert. And she left me at home. I've been doing this for 40 years, you little punk. And, but she wouldn't tell me. I said, fine, all right. I'm not bitter or anything, but I love her. I love her very much. And my daughter commissioned a few poems throughout this project, which I loved. It was a lot of fun for me. So this is one of the ones I wrote for her, and it's called Listen Up. These are hard times for the taut young minds that refuse the great delusion. The one that thought a market-based government could be good for the people. And the one that believed a two-party economy would somehow result in jobs and ribeyes for all. Their crystal sharp lenses, the young, you all see through the lies and the numb faces of politicians. The bones in your ears now an empty promise, the moment you hear one. And they, the young, can smell our failure to protect and preserve the planet on the fetid winds that blow through our trash-made mountains and over stone-caked surfaces of our oil-based rivers, lakes, and seas. So we've got the gall to wonder why they won't stop protesting and just go back to the work of making the wealthy even more impossible to stand. They may not have answers yet, but we should be listening to and very concerned about the excruciating questions they won't stop asking. And so I just went so back and forth as to whether or not to read this poem. I have no interest in offending people or whatever, but among the toughest of requests that I got, unfortunately it was a large donation, so I didn't have any choice but to write about it. And I didn't want to, and I fretted about it for weeks, and but eventually it came, and somebody wanted me to write a poem for Trump. Now, I don't care what side of the fence you're on, this is not a political poem, by the way. There's nothing political in this poem. I said, no, don't make me do that. Don't make me do that. And then eventually I figured out what I could do is I would let him write the poem for me, which he did. All I had to do was Google craziest things Trump ever said, and it just came right up. A big old list from the New York Times there, and I verified. Everything's verified on video, like all verifiable. So what I did was I took words that he said, came straight from his mouth, and I just shifted things a tiny bit to make it sound like there was a poet talking instead of him. This is called probably the greatest poem ever. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and write a poem and I wouldn't lose any readers. I will build a great, great wall out of southern metaphors and I will have all hell to pay for that wall, mark my words. I will be iambic, ithyphallic, the ballad monger and bard to the women. I mean, I want to help women. The concept of the Tao Te Ching was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive. I am the most successful poet ever to run for the residency, by far. No poet's ever been more successful than me. I'm the most successful poet ever to run. Billy Collins isn't successful like me. Bukowski, I have a Gucci store that's worth more than Bukowski. Pablo Neruda is a literary hero. He's a literary hero? He's a literary hero because he was exiled. I like poets that weren't exiled, okay? I hate to tell you. Neil Cassidy was unattractive both inside and out. I fully understand why Allen Ginsberg left him for another man. He made a good decision. Nathan L. Brown is calling for a total and complete shutdown of morons entering the United States Congress until our poets can get together and figure out what the hell is going on here. I look very much forward to showing my heroic couplets because they are huge. He said it. Sorry, losers and haters, but my pentameter quotient is one of the highest, and you all know it. Please don't feel stupid or insecure. It's not your fault. Certain guys tell me they want poems of substance, not dirty limericks. It just means they can't get dirty limericks. Why are we having all these poets from shithole countries coming here? I'm just quoting. Despite the constant lack of readers, kafefe. I loved my previous life. I had so many things going. Poetry is more work than in my previous life. I thought it would be easier. And why would John Ashbery insult me by calling me accessible when I would never call him incoherent, abstruse, and exasperating? You know, I go to academic conferences and panels and I see all these poets and I see the swamp and it's not a good place. And I too have a poetic button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. right, so there's Trump speaking for himself. I didn't have to write a thing. Just interesting things that he said over time. And so this is a song that I promised my daughter that I'll finish up with each time. And it was written for her. She has struggled some with depression, and I say struggled some, you know, the polite things we say. And she is a trooper. She's a very, very intelligent person, and she's observant, and she's paying attention to the world. So that can be hard on a good young mind. So I've done some things with her in the public sphere that went against my personality, but did it for her. So I have to be good at it. I use a lot of weird tunings, and it takes up time. So this is one that I wrote for her. And I love when she sings it. It's called Rise. I'm gonna square my shoulders, gonna plant my feet. I may be getting older, but I can still feel the beat. Gonna raise my voice, gonna make it heard. I may not have your sword, but I can sure wield these words. And I will not back off, I will not stand down. I'm gonna stop right here, I'm gonna hold my ground. You can blow your horn, you can tweak your lies, you can knock me down, but I'll only rise. Gonna raise an army, armed with poems and peace. We'll march forth in hope and love, and we will overflow these streets. So you can load your guns, bring all your bluster and wind, and we'll see who runs and who's left standing in the end. And we will not back off, we will not stand down. We're going to stop right here, we're going to hold our ground. You can blow your horn, you can tweak your lies, you can knock us down, but we'll only rise. We're gonna rise up. We're gonna rise. We're gonna rise up. We're gonna rise. So thank you all for putting that with me, and it's so great to be here. Sean, thank you for taking a chance on me and having me in. And he wanted me to open it up for questions around 1:40, and I can't believe it, but I made the time. I'm a recovering preacher's so landing the plane on time that's quite a feat. But I don't know, do you have any questions about the experience? And like I said, I mean, what happened to live performance in the arts during the pandemic was pretty amazing. My stepsister-in-law, Stephanie Gibson. She's much closer than that title sounds. She's very much like a sister to me. And she is this astounding performer, and she is regularly on Broadway. She's performed in Cinderella, all the major, and her work was Broadway. And try living in New York and having the pandemic shut down your income, because Broadway was lights out, and it was tough on them. So what I mean is, it's not just the musicians, it's not just, it affected, that's why I say live performance. It's a very, very difficult time. And a lot of us are still struggling, trying to figure out how to come to the other side of it. But this is sort of uniquely, this is my experience, this is the story of what happened to me in the pandemic, was this book series. So, any questions? Yeah. Yes, there was definitely a poem about that. That request definitely came. It's in the Purple book, and it was short. Well, I don't know, time-wise.
You're fine.
He said we're over at 1.
Plenty of time.
No, it's not 1 yet.
Let's see. So what happened with this commission thing is that I knew ahead of time it's coming. And I knew it was coming. So somebody said, oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, somebody wants me to write a poem about January 6th. And so that was a tough one. Let me see. Oh, boy. I don't. February. Fortunately, I dated the poems. So I did. So I.
That's because a former student of mine got swept up in that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's well, I mean, it affected the entire country. There's no question. And so.
I mean, he's indicted.
Oh my goodness! Why? How did I know? Okay. Don't give up on me. Let's see. We are gathered. Okay. I know that it is in this part of the book. So yeah, this was the thing. I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to be writing about what I wanted to write about, and of course, this was a tough kind of thing to take on. But I don't know what's going on here, but it's not showing up. I apologize. I didn't have that one marked, and that's just kind of blowing my mind because I know it has to be right here. But it was. I wrote directly to the people who stormed the Capitol. I wrote a letter to them, and it was much more discussion oriented than you might think. I really wanted to ask them. I really wanted to ask them a question, and genuinely. And so I have a poem that came out very, very similar to that one. It's very similar. And what it was, I had a guy who commissioned a poem. He said, I want you to write a poem. I want you to help me understand my relatives. Well, being from Oklahoma, all my relatives are from southwest Oklahoma. And he lived in far west Nebraska, so I knew what he was asking me. Help me understand my relatives. I've always been a very scary figure when I show up at family reunions. I call them cousins, sitting there. Like that's how they greet me at family reunions. The only thing that freaks them out is when you tell them that you taught the football players at that school there that they love so much. That freaks them out. They can't figure that well. I said, yeah, that quarterback, he was in my class. Really? That's all they care about. So he asked me, please help me understand my relatives. And the title of this one is, What Do You Expect? My kin come from dust and dirt, and the harsh Oklahoma wind that God breathed into them. And the dirt is as blood red as the wind is relentless. So, the garden they imagine Adam and Eve were given is a bit different from yours. Here, the fruit trees are filled with as many ants as they are peaches or pears. The beasts are family, up to the inevitable moment when they are eaten. Out on these southern plains, there's an enormous amount of room to work with, but they manage to work enough of it to have very little room left over for things like irony. So when it comes to the slick speech and sharp suits and shellacked hair and smarmy grins of those coastal commentators on TV telling them how things gotta be, of course they're going to vote with the color of their dirt. So I was just trying to help him understand his relatives, okay? And what it is, so for me, I would say I am apolitical. And so when I come to the table with questions for the rioters who stormed the Capitol, I come to them with honest questions. I'm not berating them. I'm coming with honest questions. And the other thing I will say is that generation to generation, and political polar opposite to political polar opposite, and all of these things that we have, if we don't learn how to talk to each other again, it is over. It's over. We're done. And I try my best to represent that spirit in my work as an artist. I try my best to keep that on the table. We've got to figure out a way to talk. And this kind of reaction of, you hear a single word, a trick word, and your reaction is, the conversation's already over. You've already decided what you think and believe in law, and your door closed, everything. So I just do everything I can to come to the table open. And I'm willing to talk. Anybody else have a question about this journey or what's going on with artists now? Yes, about that.
Is the journey over, or are you still doing these?
I am at the tail end of the 5th and final book of this series. I'm still taking commissions, but we are editing the 5th book in the process. I will continue doing the commissioned poems, and they will probably continue coming out as books. But we're in a different time period now, and I think series-wise, I'm going to trail off. This was a historical moment. And so these books and poems and things are very much about specific time period. And like I said, it's chronological all the way, dates on every poem. And it's an interesting, so if you start at book 1 and read through, it's an interesting journey back through where we were at this time from 2020 to 2020 through 2022. It's a very interesting little jump. Yeah.
How did you decide that it's end? Or what's the new phase you're in?
The new phase we're in is trying to figure out how to start performing again, specifically speaking to the artist's problem. And it's like I said, on this tour, I had hurricane cancel one of my main shows, and I had COVID cancel the other main show. And so without stops like this, I was dead in the water. You're going home in the hole. And so it's tough. Did you get, yeah.
Absolutely. I understand that you received commissions from a lot of heavy topics. What was the silliest commission that you received?
But there is a lot of humorous poetry in these books. I don't know what happened. I think I got freaked out that there's going to be high schoolers today, and I was trying to figure out how to read something that would matter. And it was hard. I got lots of funny commissions. One was like a lady wanted me to write a poem about being on hold with UPS for 3 days. Another guy wanted me to write a poem. It was the very first commissioned poem in the entire series. He wanted me to write a poem for the hoarders. So this was when all the grocery store shelves were emptied and nothing was on the shelves. And he wanted me to write a poem for the people who were hoarding. And man, did I let them have it. And that's a poem I love reading. Love going into that. It's kind of fun. But I definitely, I promise that it's not all serious. And as a matter of fact, in my work in general, I think poets are always in danger of seriousing themselves to death, and they really need to lighten up. And so even in my serious poems, I aim for tinges of humor in even the more serious poems. And, Mark Twain, always said that at the heart of the best humor, there's always some tragedy. We need to laugh more. And that was another thing that I was realizing what part of my role was in this project. And I very quickly figured out that helping people smile was becoming a very, very important part of my job. And I promise you that there's as much in there as I can possibly do. I don't know why they came out seriouser today. So, we got a couple. You want me to do the border poem?
Yes.
So this is the very first commissioned poem that came from a friend in Lubbock, Texas. And he was really mad about the borders. And so he wanted me to take them down. This has it's a couple of another Southwest Oklahoma references. My grandma plays pretty heavy in this poem. To the Borders, for Sam Lamb. So, my father grew up using the Sears catalog, if you know what I mean. And those of you who grew up in houses with bathrooms may not, but he knows what I mean. His mom grew the green beans, the beets, and the cucumbers they ate or pickled for later. And she picked the plums, the peaches, the blackberries they preserved in mason jars. Eggs didn't come by the dozen in styrofoam boxes. They came straight from the chicken's ass. Grandma made soap out of lye and lard from the big fat hog they slaughtered in the backyard, which tells you where they got the bacon and ham from, if you catch my drift. So, those 500 rolls of toilet paper stuffed in your closet, and all the eggs and produce stashed in your fridge, are only going to prolong your days when the real trouble comes. So I had a great friend who, he is a nuclear engineer, structural engineer for Sandia Labs, Albuquerque, New Mexico. My daughter used to get on to him and say, I could work at nuclear and that, whatever, and they were very close. Kieran is his name. And he's like, engineer, somebody has to contain. And they just loved each other. My daughter's serious. He said, okay, Kieran, you know the end, and you know how it's going to come about with your job. He has first level clearance, by the way, security clearance. So he knows stuff that he can talk about. And he said, my daughter asked him, she said, what is the one piece of advice you would give me to help me with my future? And he didn't hesitate. He said, learn how to grow your own food. And she started. She did. And she is doing it. Yes?
So do you think that if another COVID type of thing happened, we have learned anything from the one we just went through, or would we do the same dumb things again?
So, the opening paragraph of my doctoral dissertation is 2 words. It's the whole paragraph. It's 2 words. because they asked me in my introduction to describe myself. My introduction was short on my dissertation, which I did get in trouble for. The opening paragraph is hopeful cynic. I am a hopeful cynic, and I believe that if I didn't have a energized, engaged, intelligent daughter that I care very, very, very much about, I might slip too far into that cynicism. And so what I mean is, as the great poet Stephen Dunn defines cynicism, that other sadness. That's his definition for cynicism, that other sadness. In other words, I am hopeful because I have to be for my daughter, and therefore I have to march forward, and I have to help her figure out how we can take care of her world and her future. It's looking rough. I don't know if we can learn from anything. And I think the thing is, oh gosh, such an old fart thing to say, whatever. We are so shut down into our electronics that we are forgetting the meaning of actual human contact and the difference that that makes. I'm guilty. When I travel the country, I rely on technology heavily to get me where I'm going, or I would never arrive. It's, I understand. I mean, I get it. But lift your heads up and look at a person in the eyes. Come back to the actual. Try to make it a part of your life again. I haven't heard news in 12 days. When I hit the road, I haven't had access to a television. I haven't heard the news in 12 days. I doubt I've missed much. And so that's what I love. Very quick, what I do, the main thing I do actually now, post-COVID, is I do small, intimate house concerts. I do concerts in the home. No PA, no nothing. People invite their friends who love the arts, love music, poetry, and whatever. We come in, we have a small crowd, but we have a much, much more meaningful gathering. And the response is huge, and you develop a stronger following of fewer people. And I'm finding it to be much, much, much more meaningful. And changes are coming to the live performance world, big changes. And we don't know what all that is yet. But it's a time of absolute survival right now for us. And so, thank you, Library.
Last question. For the kids in the back, other than yourself, can you recommend some other musicians? We talked about Hayes Carl, James McMurray. Can you talk about some musicians that combine poetry and music that they may look for inspiration in? Some artists that inspired you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because when it comes to music, we like what we like. And by the way, did I see a hand back here? I want to make sure. I feel bad. Yeah, I'm going to do it so fast. We'll still be okay. What yes?
What was your favorite poem that you ever read?
My favorite poem I ever wrote. Oh my gosh. I have written a poem every day for the last 30 years. I don't miss. Anybody want to do the math on that? You got your calculator? A poem a day for 30 years. So that's a tough question. I do know the poem. I have a poem. I don't have it with me today that rose to the surface, where I decided that I was going to bury the critics. I was going to take on the critics. I was going to let them have it. And I did it by critiquing God. So I took the Point Lobos Nature Reserve out in California, which is just ridiculously beautiful. And I let God have it for overdoing it. You way overdid it. This is not sincere. It's inauthentic. It's all this stuff. And that's probably my most read, most performed poem, and that might be my favorite. It was critiquing God. Yeah. So here's a.
And also for the young minds, you started off in a very traditional role as university professor, and then with all the performing,
priceless for what I did, and I was very fortunate to be in a great program. Mine was a dual PhD between journalism and creative writing, so I was getting a really wide variety. My master's degree in creative writing might have been among my favorite things I did. I think I learned the most then. PhD is a survival process. It's a burning sensation for about 3 or 4 years. And I'm glad that I did it. I am. Glad to have the title, everything. But my education was absolutely priceless. And I do love it. My key educator was reading. I'm a crazed reader. And that's where I think I learned most. But my education, absolutely valuable. I hold it in great, very important to me. I had great professors. It's bad ones too, but I had great professors. So, on yours, that is a really tough question. Like, what is it you're going to like and not going to like? Here's all I will say. To me, the words matter. So no matter what kind of music you listen to, I think the words are important. And if the lyrics are trash, it's trash in, and it's trash out. And all genres have trash, whatever it is. The poets, the people who have come to my mind right now as being poets in the business, Larry McMurtry, Jason Isbell, there's all that crowd or whatever. John Mayer, it's obvious that he reads books to me. If you look close at his lyrics, he reads books. Paul Simon. Sting was a poet and an English teacher before he joined the Police. And these people are poets. It's obvious that they have read books. And, and I don't have time to make the list. There's a number of rappers who it was clear to me that they were readers, because there's no way that they were coming up with those lyrics. They had big vocabularies, and I was going, wow, and so the readers are in every genre. You just have to find where they are. And I love the great lyrics. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much. So the books are up here, and I'm going to put them in chronological order if you want to